The government gave us the ability to save for retirement, and we get some tax benefits for doing it. You either have pre-tax accounts where it lowers your taxable income today, you can invest those dollars, they grow tax deferred, and then you pay income taxes in the future. But throughout that period of time, you don't pay taxes. So if you have interest in income, not taxable. If you have a capital gain you sell, not taxable, right? It's all deferred, and then you're going to pay income taxes in the future. Or you can use Roth accounts. And what Roth accounts do is you say, I'm going to pay tax today. I'm going to let that money get invested post-tax, and I'm never going to pay taxes on those dollars again as long as I let them grow. And this is extremely impactful. And for many of the employer-sponsored plans, you actually do get a match. So the 401k, simple IRA, et cetera, most times you're going to have some match associated with it. So your company is incentivizing you to save for retirement, which is obviously really, really great. The options you have, the first one is a 401k or a 403b, and you can do $23,500 if you are under the age of 50. 401k, 403b are basically the exact same things. 401k is just this employer-sponsored retirement plan for for-profit businesses. 403bs are for non-profit businesses. The next one is a solo 401k. So a solo 401k is just a 401k for an individual. If you have a business and you have no employees, or you just have owners, or you just have you and your spouse, you can have a solo 401k, which allows you to put in the $23,500 as well. The next one is a SEP IRA. It's actually quite a bit different. You can do the $70,000, the max, the same as what it would be in a 401k or 403b or solo 401k for the total limit. The difference is with a SEP IRA, there's only employer contributions. Let's say I own a business and I make $100,000. I can put in 25% of my income, so $25,000. But if I do 25% of my income, I have to do 25% of the income for all of the rest of my employees as well. If you work at a business and you have a SEP IRA, nothing really you can do. The employer decides on how much. The next one is a simple IRA. So with a simple IRA, you can put in $16,500, and then typically there's about a match of 3%. So simple IRAs are basically just easier 401ks. They're more simple. That's where the word comes from. Lower contribution limits, but still a good benefit. I like 401ks better though. Then there's 457Bs. So 457Bs is something that you'll see typically with like doctors. They're a retirement plan that is separate from a 401k or a 403B. Oftentimes I'll see a doctor, they'll have a 403B, which they can put in the 23.5, but then they'll have a 457B where they also can put in another 23.5. So it allows you to actually be saving significantly more than what the average person can do. And then the last one really is a mega backdoor Roth 401k. So this is different than a regular 401k because it gives you a different limit. You can get $70,000 per year to a 401k, and you can do $23,500 to either pre-tax or Roth, employee contribution. After tax is separate. So let's say you have $70,000, you do $23,500 pre-tax, you get a $6,500 match, so that's $30,000. You have $40,000 of room left that you can do the mega backdoor. And to do that, you basically put it into an after-tax bucket, and then you would convert it over to Roth. You want to make sure you convert it over to Roth, because if you leave it in the after-tax bucket, all of the growth you pay income taxes on. So you don't want to do that and pay income taxes on the growth. Like you're giving up the accessibility. You'd rather put it into a taxable account to get capital gains. But if you're going to put it in after tax, convert it right over to Roth and then get all of that to grow tax free, that's when the benefit becomes really, really good. There's a couple things to note here. So it's a new rule on catch-up contributions, but if you're age 50 to 59, then you have a catch-up contribution of $7,500. So that could be for your 401k, your simple, etc. All that means is instead of 23.5, you can do 23.5 plus 7,500. But now here's the new rule. There's a new rule that if you're age 60, 61, 62, or 63, then you can do 150% of that catch-up contribution. So 7,500 times by 1.5 gets you to 11,250. So if you're in that age range, you can do 11,250 above the 23,500 number. That also gets added to the 70,000 total max per year, goes up by that amount as well for you. Super great benefit. And one thing people don't know is once you're 64 and above, you go back to that regular 7,500 $500 catch-up contribution amount. If you're an employee, right, you don't really get much choice. You work your job, they give you the benefit, and from there, you basically get to pick, do you want to do it, do you not? I urge you to definitely consider this. Like for some people, you don't have any extra income, you might not want to do it. But if you do have surplus and you do want to be investing for the future, then you typically want to use your employer-sponsored plan, typically because of the match, right? So if you have a 401k, you make $200,000 a year and they give you a match to 5%, that is $10,000 that you would not get if you don't contribute. I think this chart by Cody Garrett is really, really helpful to see the impact of a match. So if you have a 3% match and you get that, that is equal to 1.5 weeks of pay per year. And if we assume a 25-year investment time horizon with an 8% return, that would cover 2.1 years of retirement. If it's a 4% match, that's equivalent to 2 weeks of pay per year and 2.9 years of retirement covered. 5% is 2.6 weeks of pay per year and 3.6 years of retirement covered. And the last one, 6%. 6% is 3.1 weeks of pay per year and 4.3 years of retirement covered. That amount then gets invested, grows for the future. That is going to be really, really impactful for you. And it's why it makes sense to be considering this. You'll see people online that sell permanent life insurance or sell courses on real estate tell you avoid it. It's locked up to 59.5. You're going to get taxed so much on the future. And they'll give you this example of like, oh, so your 401k grows to $1 million. Now you're going to pay 37% tax and you're going to end up with $370,000 of taxes. But that's not how it works. You don't withdraw all of this at one time. You're going to withdraw part of it. You're going to have some tax at 0, 10, 12, 22, 24, etc. And you're going to have this average tax amount. So it's not just all coming out at this top tax bracket like they try to tell you. On top of that, right, if you're so worried about taxes, you could do Roth. They always ignore this side of it where you could let it be post-tax and grow tax-free forever versus them tell you to pay the tax and then go throw it into a different area. And I'm not saying don't ever own real estate or permanent life insurance, right? Those can make sense, but you definitely still want to start with getting the match and investing in these employer-sponsored retirement plans. So if you are a low-income person, typically you want to use Roth, right? The assumption is, hey, I'm not in a high tax bracket. Hopefully I'll be in a higher tax bracket in the future. So I'd rather lock in Roth today, pay that low amount, let it grow tax-free. If I'm a middle income person, call it 22, 24%, it depends on a bunch of things. Let's say you're in 22 or 24 and you're in your 20s, right? That means you're making good income. You're probably going to make better income in the future. So you might want to do Roth. If you're 22 or 24 and you just hit it and you're a couple years from retirement, it might make sense to now be doing pre-tax because the odds are that in retirement, you're going to be in a lower bracket. Now, if you're a high income person, 32, 35, 37, this is where it starts to make sense to defer today, thinking in the future, you're going to have a lower tax bracket. And so what people often mix up is they think marginal versus marginal. So they say, hey, today I'm in 22, I make 200K. So that means in retirement, I'm probably going to be in 22 as well. But that's not true, right? Let's say you make 200, but your spending is 80K. 80K of spending is not going to be in the same tax bracket. 80K of spending is also going to fill up brackets where when you choose Roth versus traditional today, you already have all the income. So you're either deferring at the top bracket or paying at the top bracket. But in retirement, you're filling through brackets. And so you want to look at marginal today versus effective in the future. These employer-sponsored plans are very beneficial for you. If you don't have a match, then it's going to depend, right? Like if I don't have a match, I'd probably look at backdoor Roth IRAs, HSAs, et cetera first, and then potentially come back to my 401k. If I have a large match, I'm going to want to take advantage of that and use it. So now the next question for most people is like, how should I invest? And so like, if you think about retirement, think about these employer-sponsored plans, they are going to have a long time horizon for you, especially if you're younger, right? You're not going to use these dollars until retirement. That's going to be 60 plus. Because of that, when you have a long time horizon, you have more capacity to take risk. Your goal is, how do I get the most growth? And I know that downturns in the market are going to happen and they're okay because I have time for it to bounce back. Typically, you want higher allocations to equities versus bonds. If you have a high risk tolerance like me, you might want to be all equities and zero bonds. If you have a low risk tolerance, right, you might want to have more 60-40 stocks to bonds. Do you want to use a target date fund? Target date funds are one of those things that are good for people who don't know what to do and not great for people who do or have a professional that they work with. All a target date fund is doing is saying, hey, you think you're going to retire at 2050. The average person who wants to retire at 2050 is going to be 80-20 today. And as you get closer to retirement, it's going to keep adding more bonds to it. You don't get a control of US versus international bonds versus equities, et cetera. It's doing it for you. If you have no idea what to invest in, that can be really good. But if you do, you're basically choosing something that isn't personal to your risk capacity, risk tolerance, viewpoints, beliefs, et cetera. And so I'm typically not a fan of target date funds unless it's, your best option. And then you might be able to have the ability to invest your Roth side and your pre-tax side differently. And I'm going to do an episode later on this, but generally you want your highest growth assets in Roth. You're going to pay no capital gains taxes on that in the future, so you want to grow the most. With your pre-tax account, let's say, you want to be 80-20 bonds. If you could park almost all of those bonds in pre-tax, that would be ideal. Why? Because one, you don't have to pay the income taxes because it's tax advantaged, but two, it's going to come out at income tax rates. If you're going to have any part of your portfolio that's going to be stable and not grow as much, you'd rather that be in the area that you're going to pay income taxes on in the future. Because if you put your highest growth assets, right, and they go from 100,000 to $1 million, that million's coming out at income tax rates versus if that 100,000 went to $1 million in Roth, that's tax-free and a very impactful difference. The other thing I just want you to be aware of is fees. A lot of times there's kind of these hidden background fees and then there's these fund fees. I'll sit down with a client. They pick the large cap fund for no reason other than they like the name and it's a 0.9 expense ratio versus 0.1. You want to look for, right, is this a good fund? But also what are the fees? You don't want to be paying 9 times the fees for something that isn't quite as good. And, if you're at a business and you're looking to try to set up a new 401k, there's 401 Go, Guideline, there's a bunch of places that now have good low cost providers that can help you get a 401k set up and not have to worry about these high fees. Moral of the story is employer-sponsored retirement plans are very advantageous. They were put in place because it's a retention tool for employees because you're getting paid more. At a 3% match all the way through a 6% match, how impactful taking advantage of that match is. What is the match? You want to at least start there. You might want to go up all the way to the max depending on if you're high income or not. And then you want to make sure you invest correctly based on you and you limit your fees. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and go follow my page for more personal finance content. And as always, if you have any thoughts, please leave it in the comments below, and I promise to get back to each individual comment. See you next week.